First guest tonight is a one-of-a-kind movie star. He is beloved all around the world. He's part of the all-star cast of Argylle, which opens in theaters Friday. Please welcome Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson didn't just walk off live television, he detonated it. We watched it happen in real time. Hollywood's highest-grossing actor, the man whose films have pulled in more than $27 billion worldwide, refusing to be cornered by a morning show anchor whose resume includes the NFL, daytime charm, and, after this, an abrupt education in what happens when you disrespect a legend on national TV. This wasn't a glitch, a flub, or some awkward moment you can edit out later. This was Samuel L. Jackson in front of millions, sending a message so loud the echo hit every newsroom and every boardroom in the entertainment business. In 40 years of morning show mishaps, nothing has gone off quite like this.
Joining us from their home in Los Angeles, California, the Samuel L. Jackson and the LaTonya Richardson Jackson. How you doing? Thank you. I like it. Good to see you.
We saw the studio freeze up as Michael Strahan, who's no stranger to handling pressure, leaned in and pressed the question that set the fuse. How much longer can you keep doing this? The cameras were rolling, the audience was primed for another easy chat, and suddenly, the air was sucked out of the room. Jackson, sitting across from Strahan, cut him off in the middle of that question. There was no laugh track, no wink, no PR-friendly dod. Instead, what we got was the kind of stillness you only see when someone's about to say or do something that can't be taken back. The gravity of the moment became clear almost immediately. Strahan's attempt to reframe the question about Jackson's age and career longevity fell flat, and Robin Roberts tried to jump in and save the segment, but the damage was done. The audience, usually quick to laugh or clap, went silent. Insiders who were on set say they heard the unmistakable click of Jackson unclipping his microphone, a sound, as one crew member told us later, that felt like Hollywood itself snapping. But a man like Samuel L. Jackson draws a line, it's because that line has already been crossed 100 times before.
Father, a husband, a son. I'm a good person with all that. I'm a citizen. I pay my taxes. I've never been arrested. I believe in education. I believe in one's, treating man the way you want man to treat you. Yeah, I'm a movie star to you. To me, I'm just a guy with an interesting job.
Here's where it gets even uglier. Sources familiar with the situation have told multiple outlets that Jackson referred to Strahan's questions as insulting. Not just uncomfortable or off limits, but a test. One more attempt by an industry obsessed with youth to see if he still mattered. These aren't whispers from distant cousins or someone who once walked his dog. These are people in the room, people who know how the business works, and their version tracks with everything we saw play out live. But if anyone thought Samuel L. Jackson would just get up and leave quietly, they haven't been paying attention for the last 50 years. This is a man who survived everything Hollywood and life could throw at him. We're talking about someone whose breakthrough didn't come until he was over 40, who was nearly written off by the industry before he was even given a shot. Jackson has talked openly about surviving his own substance abuse in the late 1980s, about how his wife, LaTonya Richardson, and his daughter found him unconscious on the kitchen floor and gave him a final ultimatum. He didn't blink then, and he didn't blink this morning on live television. The difference is, back then, nobody cared as long as he showed up on time and hit his marks. Now, after building a reputation as the most bankable actor in history, he's not letting anyone rewrite his story with cheap shots about getting old.
The dark moments for me was, thinking about my career and thinking about, why I wasn't, oh, poor me, oh, poor me, oh, poor me. Then I get high and I forgot about, oh, poor me.
Yeah.
But for me, see, I have a direct correlation between getting sober and success.
Let's not pretend this was some fragile ego finally snapping. Jackson has always played the long game, whether he was fighting for better roles as a young actor in segregated Tennessee or holding his ground with legendary directors like Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino. When he finally won international attention thanks to a performance in Jungle Fever so raw that Cannes invented an award just to honor it, he did it while recovering from a history of substance abuse. Most actors would have buried and never spoken of again. His attitude has never been soft. In his own words, fame messes everything up. It was a warning, and today, on national television, that warning exploded in real time. So when Michael Strahan kept pressing about how much longer Jackson could keep doing this, what the audience saw was not an aging star protecting his pride, but a lifelong rebel being told, one more time, that he needed to justify his existence in a system that would rather recycle the next young face than honor the legends it already has. Insiders close to Jackson claim he saw the exchange as an outright challenge, not just to his stamina but to his value in the room. And unlike most celebrities, he spent decades mastering the art of self-control. He said it himself, if fame had come when he was still in the grip of substance abuse, it would have burned him out. He spent 40 years building a career that doesn't rely on anyone else's approval. And today's disaster was just the latest and perhaps the most public test of whether Hollywood's so-called coolest guy would finally bend.
I don't want to, lord it over you because you see me or I'm famous. I'm famous because you think I'm famous. Don't ask my characters. Don't ask Nick Fury to be your role model. Don't ask Mace Windu to be your role model. Don't ask Jules Winfield to be your role model. If you're talking about Samuel Jackson, I'm a professional. I show up at work on time. I know my lines. I hit my marks. And I treat the other actors and the crew members with respect.
Let's take a minute to remember exactly who we're talking about. This is the same Samuel L. Jackson who grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, raised by a single mother and a rotating cast of grandparents who stuttered so badly he once relied on strong language just to get the words out. Acting, according to his own family, wasn't just a hobby, it was therapy. He started at Morehouse, marched at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral, and once held college trustees hostage during a protest, earning himself a suspension and a lifetime of FBI interest. When Hollywood finally called, it was always someone else's name on the first line of the casting sheet. Denzel Washington, Danny Glover, Forrest Whitaker. Jackson was next in line if he was lucky.
I was looking at you was born 20 years before the Civil Rights Act in 1964.
Mm-hmm.
So how,
48.
Yeah. So how different did the world look then as opposed to now?
I grew up during American apartheid. I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They had signs, I knew where I could go, where I couldn't go, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, all those things. And you kind of look at life and go, okay. And then when I hear him say it now, make America great again, I go, what are you talking about?
But persistence pays off, especially when you're too stubborn to quit. The break came in the early 90s after Spike Lee trusted Jackson to play Gator in Jungle Fever. He was so convincing in the role that Cannes, which had never before given a supporting actor award, broke protocol just for him. According to Jackson, if he'd had that level of attention when he was still battling substances, he would have crashed and burned. So yes, when he says fame messes everything up, it's not a slogan, it's a survivor's warning. That warning echoed through the GMA studio today, and not for the first time. He's always known what the industry does to its legends when they stop smiling for the cameras. The aftermath of Jackson's walk-off was immediate and brutal. The audience gasped as he calmly unclipped his microphone, set it on the coffee table, and announced without raising his voice that he wouldn't be part of a broadcast that confused disrespect for honesty. Insiders say the energy in the studio shifted instantly. Producers were seen scrambling behind the scenes, allegedly cutting to commercial early and launching what sources later called a full meltdown in the control booth. It wasn't just about losing a segment. It was about the realization that the unwritten contract between celebrity and media, the one where stars agree to play along in exchange for attention, had just been ripped up live on one of the country's biggest platforms.
And you're in a rich environment of creative people that share the same goals. Everybody was trying to get somewhere, or everybody had a different idea about how it was going to happen. And there was enough going on, or enough people moving. Like we're doing a play and all of a sudden Denzel is like, he plucked out and he's gone. She's like, okay, so Denzel got their TV show, now he's doing movies. Okay, boom, then he's doing another play and Morgan gets plucked out, boom, he's gone.
That's what separates this moment from the usual morning show chaos. This wasn't a spat between egos or a bad question gone sideways. This was Hollywood's most bankable actor walking out on the expectation that he would sit still and take whatever was thrown his way, all because the calendar says he's pushing 76. In any other context, Strahan's line of questioning might have slipped by, but today, with Jackson's entire career and public persona built on the idea of refusing to be boxed in, the disrespect landed differently. And when he dropped that microphone, it wasn't just a prop hitting a table. The sound echoed through every PR office in Hollywood, leaving executives and publicists asking themselves which other stars might decide they've had enough. We're already seeing the fallout begin. Social media exploded within minutes of the incident, with fans and fellow actors weighing in on both sides. Statements from the network were slow to materialize, and industry insiders say the phones at every major talent agency started ringing before the next commercial break had even ended. Some sources close to GMA claimed that producers were blindsided, insisting there was no intention to ambush Jackson, while others suggest this was exactly the kind of controversy that boosts ratings, no matter who gets burned in the process.
It's not often I get to come to shows I actually watch.
Yeah. Meanwhile, whispers are circulating that this live meltdown may have triggered deeper anxiety inside the industry. If Samuel L. Jackson, a man who survived addiction, racial barriers, and half a century of career setbacks, can walk away from a national stage without looking back, What does that say about the next generation of stars? Are we watching the beginning of a new era where celebrities no longer accept the unspoken rules of the fame game? Or is this just one more chapter in Hollywood's endless cycle of build them up and tear them down? The truth, as always, depends on who's holding the microphone when the cameras cut back in. It's not lost on anyone that as Jackson walked out of the studio, the live audience began to clap. Not everyone, but enough that the applause started as a ripple and then grew into a wave. That reaction alone sent a clear message not just to Strahan and the GMA crew, but to everyone watching at home. Viewers aren't as passive as producers like to think. They saw what happened, and the response was unmistakable. Respect is earned, not handed out with a coffee mug and a plug for your latest movie.
That I had to go back and stop and say, well, where am I in the midst of all that? You know, how many people have I created to cover this thing to the point that maybe I've gotten lost in who I am, and I don't know.
So do you still have days when you're on set where you're?
Oh yeah. I have days, or you know, some days it's B, some days it's P, some days it's.
We can't ignore the way the other hosts handled the fallout. Robin Roberts, usually the voice of calm on the show, apologized to Jackson in real time. George Stephanopoulos, who's seen more than his share of political fireworks, looked visibly shaken and stepped in to try and salvage the segment. But by then, the moment had already slipped through their fingers. The tension on set lingered long after Jackson's exit, and as the show limped to its conclusion, industry sources say emergency meetings were called upstairs to handle what was already being called a crisis event. Insiders claim there's more at stake here than just bruised egos in a viral video. The rumor mill is already grinding out theories about behind-the-scenes power struggles. Did Strahan go rogue? Or was this an attempt to push Jackson on orders from higher up? There's talk of strained relationships between the anchor team and network management, and some sources allege that producers had been warned in advance that Jackson wouldn't tolerate questions about his age. If that's true, then what we saw wasn't an accident at all, but a collision between a star who's made a career out of refusing to be underestimated and a system that still wants to control the narrative at any cost. As new details emerge, the stakes are getting higher. Some PR veterans are speculating, off the record, that Jackson's team may demand an official apology, not just to save face, but to set a precedent for how legacy talent is treated on air. Others wonder if this signals a larger shift in celebrity-media relations. After all, if the biggest names in Hollywood can no longer trust that even the safest interviews won't turn hostile, how many will keep showing up for morning show rounds, press junkets, and late-night appearances? It's a question that every agent, publicist, and network executive will be asking themselves as the fallout continues.
See, it's probably going to disappoint you in an interesting sort of way.
Okay.
Because when people ask me to speak to people about my experience or about, you know, what all that was, it's hard for me because I had a great time. I was balling out until they found me passed out, or at least
Meanwhile, we've already seen early signs of damage control. The GMA producers have quietly started reaching out to other A-listers scheduled for future appearances, hoping to calm nerves and avoid further cancellations. But the uncertainty lingers, especially as whispers surface about internal memos and tense conference calls that began almost immediately after the broadcast. If the goal was to spark conversation, it's safe to say the mission was accomplished, though not in the way anyone at the network intended.
the theater, and I loved acting, and being here in a rich community of creative people is invigorating. We went to each other's shows, we watched each other work, we went to auditions together, we talked, there was no enmity, everybody was, great together.
Because as the minutes tick by and the story spreads, new questions are surfacing about who really holds the power in these encounters. Is it the star who built their career from the ground up, or the network that decides which stories get told and how? What happens when the usual scripts are thrown out the window and both sides realize, live on air, that neither is willing to back down? The industry's watching closely, and no one's sure where the next blow will land. Within hours, the fallout began. Before most viewers even finished sharing their own outrage online, network executives were already convening behind glass walls, emails flying between legal and PR teams. We watched as statements were drafted, as if a paragraph on company letterhead could sweep up what had just happened in front of millions. Insiders told reporters that off-air, the atmosphere in the studio was closer to a post-crash triage than a typical rap meeting. Co-hosts were allegedly overheard calling the segment a disaster, scrambling to figure out if anyone would ever trust their couch again.
A loving community, and people who make you understand that you are great people, and there's a reason that they do this to you. That they try to keep you back because you are the richness of what the world is. That you offer something that they don't have, and they know they can't have it, but they want to control it. So you listen to those people. You have the right teachers. whole school life was.
But the real aftershock wasn't limited to that building. We saw the story catch fire well beyond the early morning audience. Samuel L. Jackson's fellow stars didn't wait for a safe moment to weigh in. According to industry leaks, more than one household name reached out directly, not just to offer support, but to say aloud what many in Hollywood have been holding back for years. The phrase that kept resurfacing in those closed-door conversations, Samuel said what every veteran star has wanted to say on camera, that the so-called celebrity interview has become an assembly line, a place where legacy and career are chopped into 30-second viral clips. For actors who built empires by pushing back against the machine, there was no mistaking the symbolism. Meanwhile, tabloid columnists and morning show apologists took their shot at controlling the narrative, spinning Jackson as angry, even unstable, as if the industry's most bankable star had just lost his cool for no reason at all. Fans weren't buying it. Across social media, it was a full-throated defense, not just of Jackson, but of authenticity itself, from people exhausted by seeing icons treated like yesterday's content. We can't ignore the irony that this isn't the first time Jackson has stared down power and refused to blink. Here's a man who ushered at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral before Hollywood even knew his name, a man who spent his career mocking the system from both inside and out, dropping F-bombs in Marvel boardrooms and taking shots at billionaires on live TV. His rebellion has always been personal, calculated, and, despite the tabloid myth-making, deliberate. The escalation didn't come out of nowhere. Meanwhile, sources inside talent agencies and PR shops started quietly panicking. According to at least one former show producer, meetings were called with big-name reps and crisis consultants within the day. Nobody wanted to be the next live interview, an agent texted a trade reporter. Behind the scenes, we heard talk of stars now demanding written question lists, New and Diaz even threatening to do all promo through pre-taped packages. If morning television once relied on the unspoken contract of civility, smile, nod, plug the project, Jackson's exit just rewrote the rules. He's never played by the old ones anyway. We know his reputation, unfiltered, never hiding from the uncomfortable truth, from calling out former presidents to pointing a finger at those who, in his words, dodge paying their fair share. This is the same man who, months before this blow-up, was on stage prepping for Avengers Doomsday and starring in The Piano Lesson at age 75, defying any notion that the clock can tell him when to quit.
The legend, the icon, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
Morning.
Good morning. Do you like getting up this early, first and foremost?
I'm up this early every day.
Okay.
Actually, if I'm working, I'm definitely up because I'm headed to set by 5:36. But
That's why this moment feels less like a slip and more like a verdict years in the making. As the days went by, whispers multiplied. Was Jackson's walk off a singular act, or was it the first domino in a much bigger shift? Some say relationships between major networks and A-list talent have been strained for a while. A producer who asked not to be named claimed they saw emails flying from 3 different studios, all flagged urgent, asking whether other high-profile guests would now follow Jackson's lead. On the other side, actors who usually keep their distance from controversy started to offer support, some in public, most in private. There's a reason for that hesitancy. Nobody wants to be first in line when the system pushes back. But what if the rules just changed? One rep for a major film star reportedly joked that Jackson just started the actor rebellion we've all been waiting for. The mood wasn't just one of outrage, but a sense that after decades of PR games and carefully sanitized interviews, this 38-second explosion might finally be the spark that makes Hollywood's power brokers sweat.
China, I was smoking it up,
Yeah.
I was in a bad space.
Yeah, you're in a beautiful space now.
And then there's the cultural absurdity at the center of all this. The same man who was once booted from Broadway for his campus activism now has the studio system panicking over a single gesture, a calm refusal to play along. We've watched for years as Jackson delivered the lines that made movies immortal, but it's the off-script moment that's become the real blockbuster. They wanted a soundbite. He gave them a sermon. They wanted a viral moment. He gave them a reality check. The whole industry is still parsing the difference. Now, as the dust refuses to settle, we're seeing the stakes escalate even further. Reports keep surfacing of meetings canceled, of producers circulating memos warning staff to maintain strict professionalism in every future booking. Quietly, some execs admit this is about more than one walk-off. It's about control and what happens when the old model stops working. As rumors swirl about fresh Andy ads and media training boot camps for hosts, we can't help but notice the unease underneath it all. What happens to the network ecosystem if every legendary guest now comes in ready to flip the script? If Jackson's move becomes the new playbook, is this the dawn of a new Hollywood labor standoff? One that's not about contracts or sequels, but dignity? So was this Samuel L. Jackson destroying his own interview? Or was it the moment Hollywood's most controlled system finally lost control? Either way, every producer in town heard that microphone drop, and none of them can unhear it. What would you have done if you were in Jackson's seat? Is this the start of a real change in how Hollywood treats its legends? Or just another viral moment that'll fade by next week? Let us know below, and don't forget, sometimes the loudest message is the one nobody saw coming. Until next time, keep watching, keep questioning, and remember, nothing in Hollywood stays hidden for long.